Hey, what's going on, guys? Threat Level Midnight here, and today I'm going to talk to you about the BOG Death Grip tripod. I have the carbon fiber model here. I've had this one for a little over a year, and I finally have enough hunts on it and enough time shooting with it to kind of give my thoughts on it from a perspective of someone who's actually put in a lot of hours using it. I'd like to go over some of the features that it has, its strengths, weaknesses, the ways that I've used it, and just kind of my overall thoughts. And then I also have some upgrades for it that I'm going to start adding on to it today too. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the legs of this tripod. So you'll notice that there's these little levers right here, and there's 3 positions, and you can push them from side to side. So it shows a little mark right here. So the first position allows the leg to open 20 degrees. So that's going to give you the most height. And then you can go to 45 on your next position, and then all the way to 85. So if you're going to be seated or you're on a slope, anything like that, it's nice. It's a real positive lockup. So there's literally no vibration in it at all. The legs are 3-piece legs, and they telescope out using these clamps. So a lot of what people would call top tier tripods are just going to have the twist lock. This one has a little bit more hardware attached to it. So all you need to do is just loosen the clamp, 1 and 2, and then the legs can go ahead and extend. I don't mind the clamps. If you listen carefully here, they kind of make that kind of squeaking sound. It's the plastic grinding together. I've seen some negative reviews about the BOG, the clamps, people saying that their hardware comes loose, and it does, but it's like any other piece of equipment. If you're going to take it out in the field, you're going to throw it in a side-by-side, it's going to vibrate around. Any screws can be prone to coming loose, so check your equipment before you go out. And I've never had a problem with it, so when I read that, it's just kind of telling me, hey, maybe these people aren't really taking care of their equipment or not paying attention to it. You'll also notice on the bottom, there's little spiked feet that can dig into the ground here. And you can extend those out and kind of level off with them too if you wanted to. I just leave them in their fully closed position and just leave it how it is. That's not a big deal for me. With the legs fully extended, it says it's 59 inches. I measured it to the base of the saddle here at like 58.5. So from what they say to reality, it's pretty much spot on. I'm 6'1", and with the legs fully extended at that 20-degree angle right here, it pretty much puts a rifle perfect for me. So for reference, I'll put a rifle in it later and show you guys. It advertises 7.5 pounds online. I weighed it today. It was 8 flat. So a half-pound difference. Maybe my scale's not calibrated, can't say that it is. But most of the weight's going to be coming from the saddle up top. So this is a beefy clamp that they attach to this thing. And the knobs are made out of, looks like almost cast iron, it looks like. Some sort of metal here. So the knobs are real heavy. The plate itself is metal, and so are the actual grasping portions right here. So a lot of the weight is up top, so it's going to be interesting. Later today I'm going to take this thing off and we'll see how much weight this actually adds to it. So let's go ahead and get this thing extended and go over some of the other features. Alright, so if we look at our saddle here, you can see that it has a couple of knobs on it. So this one right here is just closes this. It's like a vise, so it grafts around the rifle. And we'll talk about the clamp itself in a minute. But it allows you to pan with the rifle, and this little adjustment right here tightens that adjustment down. So you can see it builds friction. It's just a friction lock. It's a collar around this little post here. Even tightened down all the way, you can still turn it quite a bit, which isn't a deal breaker because it holds it tight enough where you can get the job done. And I've never had an issue with it, spinning on me or not providing the stability I needed. And then I'll spin this thing around to the other side. Now, this is the adjustment where it leaves a little something to be desired, in my view. If you loosen this one up, now that's your tilt. So running it all the way down and putting a lot of mustard on it right there, I can still tilt this thing just from right here. So you can imagine if you have a rifle that's weighted either in the front or the back, unless you put this thing on the gun's balance point, then it might not work the way that you want it to. You might end up getting your gun put up in the sky until you get behind it, and now you're holding your gun up and you need like some sort of rear support. You majorly need a rear support because this thing's loose. Now again, it hasn't really been a factor on my hunts. I haven't had any problems, taking my shots with it. But as far as like using this for like PRS competitions and everything, I don't know if this is right for you. It could be if you can make it work, of course, but it might not be the best decision for you to use this one. Just a little bit to add on to the clamp here. You know, this is like a hunting implement here, so I don't think that they specifically marketed this for like PRS shooting. The company's called Bog Hunt. Their Instagram is Bog Hunt. So if you use a hunting rifle in it, which I have here, let me get one. So here's a Savage Model 110. It's a 300 Winchester Magnum. It's got a 24-inch barrel. So it's a fairly heavy hunting rifle, but a hunting rifle nonetheless, so it's a lot lighter than some of my long-range stuff. I have a nice place to clamp right at the balance point of the rifle, so I can pretty much leave the rifle right here, and it's even front-loaded a little bit because this barrel is so heavy and long. But I can run my clamp down on it right around the action, and the thing holds just fine. It's not in danger of swiveling forward or dropping backwards. But like I say, me being 6'1", you can see where this thing holds the rifle just about perfect for me. So if you're taller than that, hey, you might need something to chalk it up a little bit. You might need to change the head on this thing. But if you're under 6'1", there's plenty of adjustment for you. But like I say, they designed this thing for hunting, so for a hunting rifle, this works great. Now let me show you something else, something that I shoot for long range. It's probably maybe a 15-pound rifle. All right, so here's a Savage Model 10. It's in an MDT Oryx chassis. It has a Schmidt & Bender scope on it that's real heavy, and a real heavy contour barrel on it. Most of the weight in this rifle is going to be towards the back, so I can't even get this thing shifted forward enough to reach that balance point. So you're going to see what happens, and I'll tighten this thing down all the way so I have a barricade stop on there that's preventing me from going any closer to it. So I'll clamp my rifle in, and this is turned down all the way. And now if I let it go, it's slowly moving. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but my barrel is ever so slowly rising. And if I touch it even a little bit, it goes. So does it provide enough stability, especially for like hunting and stuff? Yeah, of course it does. It still provides great stability even like this, and I still let go of the gun. And for the majority of the guns, it's gonna be just fine. But like I say, in the PRS world, it might cause you a problem, especially if you're running a heavier gun. So you might want to look elsewhere for something or upgrade this thing like I'm going to do today. I kind of want to go over what I've done with this thing before and how I've used it. So the first thing that I've shot the most with is ground squirrels, oddly enough. I go to my brother's ranch. He's got a huge squirrel problem, so his bridges and his roads get torn up by squirrels all the time. So by day, we're shooting squirrels, and at dusk and dawn, we're shooting coyotes and hogs out there. So when I switched over to a bog, and he had one before I did, it was a game changer in the squirrel world. I'll tell you what, if you've ever done just like spot and stalk hunting, I mean, you're doing that in high volume with squirrels. And so I take my squirrel gun. It's a nice lightweight rifle. It's a Savage 93 R17, and even though it's got a bull barrel, it's not even close to the weight of those other guns. And all I do is just pick this thing up and walk to the next location, set it back down, and I'm already on the target. So this thing allowed me to shoot more squirrels in one sitting than I've ever been able to do before, compared to having a bipod on or just trying to find a tree or something to lean up against to stabilize yourself. And then you're able to take shots that are, you know, from the standing position well over 100 yards at squirrels and land them every single time. So squirrels, this was like my first taste of the bog, and it was a total game changer for me. So ever since that day, I was like, man, I can't believe I haven't been using one of these things my whole life. But I don't know, you know, these bipods have kind of, or the tripods have kind of come around in the last like 5 years or so with hunting and like PRS shooting. And the next thing I shot with it was a few hogs. And the first time we were set up in a blind, and I was using my 300 Win Mag. And these are good tripods for that too. You can just set these things up in a blind and just chill out in a chair. I'm not much of a blind hunter myself. I prefer just trekking through the woods or open terrain until I find something. But just sitting up with this thing and then shooting hogs, it did just fine. It did everything that you could want it to do. And then after we used the blind, I told my brother, I was like, hey man, I don't want to shoot at this blind anymore. Let's just go and stalk some pigs up in some hills, set up some, you know, some distant shots and just take what we can get. So we ended up trekking around in the hills, ended up seeing a hog that was maybe, I ranged it at like 245, right around 250 yards. And there's two real huge pieces of brush. So the only way I could get an angle on it was the standing shot. So had the bog with me, set it up real quick, and then ended up taking the shot at about 250 and dropping the pig. It's a 300 Win Mag, so it just dumps the thing in its tracks. But this is a mobile shooting position, so you know, it made it all possible. I've never been able to take so many shots as when I switched over to a tripod and just had it on me. Sometimes it's a pain because you don't want to have to set it up, and that's where like the nicer tier tripods come in with the quicker adjust legs. But even still, it takes, you know, if you're proficient at setting this thing up, you're looking at like 30 seconds to get it set up, and that might be more than, you know, not enough time, but for me, for the most part, even pigs that are cruising up a hill, it's like, hey, what is my shot like 30 yards further after I set it up? Who cares? Not a big deal for me. So like I say, I was able to take more shots with this gun than anything else. Also for coyotes, spot stalking and shooting them in a blind, just setting up on this thing with various guns, with AR-15s or using this same rifle right here, it did wonderful. I will say, something else that's really good about the tripods and the bog being inexpensive is teaching kids how to shoot. So my son is 4, so I've been taking him shooting a couple of times now. But what I like to do is just set the rifle up on a tripod, and then he can get behind it and just work the bolt on a gun and just get comfortable shooting and just have a good time doing it. You know, it's hard for a toddler to support a rifle, and it's a lot easier to learn on rifles than it is on handguns. So this is a great tool if you're going to be teaching kids to shoot. Keeps the gun in a safe direction. It's easy for you to take control if someone gets a little wily with it and wants to spin it on you. You can just keep it from spinning and keep that gun in a safe direction too. All right, so now that I've talked about the things that have worked for me and the things I like about it, let's talk about some downsides, right? So the limitations are going to be like the hardware on the legs, right? People have complained about it. If you maintain the hardware, not a problem. It is a little bit prone to corrosion. I've taken this thing out in the rain. I've taken it out in the snow. I've taken it out in heavy dust. But you just got to maintain it like you do any other piece of equipment, just like your rifle, and it's really not a big deal. The weight, I don't even know. This is my only shooting tripod that I have, so I don't know what these higher tier tripods are weighing in at, but I will say that the head of this thing, this clamp, the saddle here is pretty heavy, and I'm going to take it off in a little bit, and I'll show you guys how heavy it actually is. But that's something that to me it's like, you know, I wish it was a little bit lighter, but again, not a big deal. Now if you're trekking for miles and miles and miles and every ounce counts, then it is going to kind of be a big deal. You know, the other thing, the biggest thing to me is that if you're shooting on uneven terrain, right, you can't cant this saddle at all, right? You have one knob that controls panning, and then you have one knob that controls tilt. And if you're on uneven terrain, then you need to loosen your clamp and then rotate your gun around in the clamp and then tighten the clamp back down. So it's kind of a process, especially if you have the thing set up on a hillside and you're shooting, or you're trying to set up on something that's moving, like say you set up to shoot hogs and they're moving through the hillside and you need to constantly be panning, and then before you know it, your reticle is diagonal, right? And then you need to loosen this thing up, recenter your gun, clamp it back down. And now I know that Bog came out with the Bog Infinite tripod, and it has a ball head on it. And that's going to be the biggest upgrade for me, is that there's plenty of upgrades out here for it, and it's easy to do. So I'm going to make, the next video I make is going to be upgrading this thing to a ball head. I'm going to go ahead and start switching to Arca rails for everything too. I'm going to keep this and put an Arca rail on the clamp itself. But I really want that ball head feature. But like I say, I've shot hundreds of creatures with this thing just as it is. So if it's a choice between nothing and this wins every time. And if your price point is, you know, under $300, like you can find this one on Amazon right now for $250, right around there. I think on their website they advertise like $329, but for $250, you know, the carbon fiber model, that's great. And if it's on sale, or you can go through like Expert Voice, with like military or law enforcement credentials, you can get a little discount on there too, and it'll reduce the price even more. So for the price, I thought it was a phenomenal purchase, and it changed the way that I shoot, especially when I'm out like hunting on my brother's ranch or hunting out in the desert or anything. It really did, because it's just a mobile shooting position everywhere you go. So that's my thoughts on the Bog. Overall, 100% endorse this thing. If you're a person of finer tastes and you have the money to throw at a real high-end tripod that's already got a ball head on it, and you're going to use it for like PRS, hey, by all means do it. But if you're someone that goes to shoot squirrels, shoots some hogs every now and then, does a little bit of spot stalking, you know, hey, this is a great option and it's super cost effective. So hope you guys like this video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you.